Hello Mark, I'm Vicky, and my student number is S0341016. Amy Cuddy, your body language shapes who you are. And I'm a sophomore in NCUE. So I want to start by offering you a free no-tech life hack. And all it requires of you is this, that you change your posture for 2 minutes. But before I give it away, I want to ask you to right now do a little audit of your body and what you're doing with your body. So how many of you are sort of making yourself smaller? Maybe you're hunching, crossing your legs, maybe wrapping your ankles. Sometimes we hold onto our arms like this. Sometimes we spread out. I see you. So I want you to pay attention to what you're doing right now. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes, and I'm hoping that if you learn to tweak this a little bit, it could significantly change the way your life unfolds. So, we're really fascinated with body language, and we're particularly interested in other people's body language. We're interested in, an awkward interaction, or a smile, or an contemptuous glance, or maybe a very awkward wink, or maybe even something like a handshake. Here, they are arriving at number 10. This lucky policeman gets to shake hands with the President of the United States. Here comes the Prime Minister. No. So a handshake, or a lack of a handshake, can have us talking for weeks and weeks and weeks. Even the BBC and the New York Times. So obviously, when we're thinking about nonverbal behavior or body language, but we code it nonverbals as social scientists, it's language. So we're thinking about communication. When we think about communication, we think about interactions. So what is your body language communicating to me? What's mine communicating to you? And there's a lot of reasons to believe that this is a valid way to look at this. So social scientists have spent a lot of time looking at the effects of our body language. So other people's body language on judgments. And we make sweeping judgments and inferences from body language. And those judgments can predict really meaningful life outcomes, like who we hire or promote, or we exile on a date. For example, Melanie Embody, a researcher at Tufts University, shows that when people watch 30-second soundless clips of real physician-patient interactions, their judgments of the physician's niceness predict whether or not the physician will be sued. So it doesn't have to do so much with whether or not the physician was incompetent. But do we like that person and how they interacted? Even more dramatic, Alex Todorov at Princeton has shown us that judgments of political candidates' faces in just 1 second predict 70% of U.S. Senate and gubernatorial race outcomes, and even, let's go digital. Emoticons used well in online negotiations can lead you to claim more value from that negotiation. If you use them poorly, bad idea, right? So when we think of nonverbals, we think of how we judge others, how they judge us, and what the outcomes are. We tend to forget about the other audience that's influenced by our nonverbals, and that's ourselves. We are also influenced by their nonverbals, our thoughts and our feelings and our physiology. So what nonverbals am I talking about? I'm a social psychologist. I study prejudice. and I teach at a competitive business school. So it was inevitable that I would become interested in power dynamics. I became especially interested in nonverbal expressions of power and dominance. And what are nonverbal expressions of power and dominance? Well, this is what they are. So in the animal kingdom, they are about expanding. So you make yourself big, you stretch out, you take up space, and you're basically open up. It's about opening up. And this is true across the animal kingdom. It's not just limited to primates. And humans do the same thing. So they do this both when they have power sort of chronically and also when they're feeling powerful in the moment. And this one is especially interesting because it really shows us how universal and old these expressions of power are. This expression, which is known as pride, Jessica Tracy has studied. She shows that people who are born with sight and people who are congenitally blind do this when they win at a physical competition. So when they cross the finish line, they've won. It doesn't matter if they've never seen anyone do it. They do this, so the arms up in a V and the chin is slightly lifted. What do we do when we feel powerless? We do exactly the opposite. We close up, we wrap ourselves up, we make ourselves small. We don't want to bump into the person next to us. So again, both animals and humans do the same thing. And this is what happens when you put together high and low power. So what we tend to do when it comes to power is that we complement the other's nonverbals. So if someone is being really powerful with us, we tend to make ourselves smoother. We don't mirror to them. We don't mirror them. We do the opposite of them. So I'm watching this behavior in the classroom, and what do I notice? I notice that MBA students really exhibit the full range of power nonverbals. So you have people who are like caricatures of alphas really coming into the room. They get right into the middle of the room before class even starts, like they really want to occupy space. When they sit down, they're sort of spread out. They raise their hands like this. You have other people who are virtually collapsing when they come in. As soon as they come in, you see it. You see it on their faces and their bodies. And they sit in their chair and they make themselves tiny. And they go like this when they raise their hand. I noticed a couple of things about this. 1. You're not going to be surprised. It seems to be related to gender. So women are much more likely to do this kind of thing than men. Women feel chronically less powerful than men. So this is not surprising. But the other thing I noticed is that it also seemed to be related to the extent to which the students were participating and how well they are participating. This is really important in the MBA classroom because participation counts for half the grade. So business schools have been struggling with this gender grade gap. You get these equally qualified women and men coming in, and then you get these differences in grades, and it seems to be partly attributable to participation. So I started to wonder, okay, you have these people coming in like this, and they're participating. Is it possible that we could get people to fake it, and would it let them to participate more? So my main collaborator, Dana Carney, who's at Berkeley, and I really wanted to know, can you fake it till you make it? Like, can you do this just for a little while and actually experience a behavioral outcome that makes you seem more powerful? So you know that our nonverbals govern how other people think and feel about us. There's a lot of evidence, but our question really was, do our nonverbals govern how we think and feel about ourselves? There is some evidence like they do. So, for example, we smile when we feel happy, but also when we are forced to smile by holding a pen in our teeth like this, it makes us feel happy. So it goes both ways. When it comes to power, it also goes both ways. So when you feel powerful, you're more likely to do this, but it's also possible that when you pretend to be powerful, you are more likely to actually feel powerful. So the second question really was, so we know that our minds change our bodies, but is it also true that our bodies change our minds? And when I say minds, in the case of the powerful, what am I talking about? So I'm talking about thoughts and feelings and a sort of physiological things that make up our thoughts and feelings. And in my case, that's hormones. I look at hormones. So what do the minds of the powerful versus the powerless look like? So powerful people tend to be, not surprisingly, more assertive and more confident, more optimistic. They actually feel they're going to win even at games of chance. They also tend to be able to think more abstractly. So there's a lot of differences. They take more risks. There are a lot of differences between powerful and powerless people. Physiologically, there also are differences on two key hormones. Testosterone, which is the dominance hormone, and cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So what we find is that high-power alpha males in primate hierarchies have high testosterone and low cortisol, and powerful and effective leaders also have high testosterone and low cortisol. So what does that mean? When you think about power, people tended to think only about testosterone because there was about dominance. But really, power is also about how you react to stress. So do you want a high power leader less dominant, high on testosterone, but really stress reactive? Probably not, right? You want a person who's powerful and assertive and dominant, but not very stress reactive, the person who's laid back. So we know that in primate hierarchies, if an alpha needs to take over, if an individual needs to take over an alpha role sort of suddenly, within a few days, the individual's testosterone has gone up significantly and his cortisol has dropped significantly. So we have this evidence, both that the body can shape the mind, at least the facial level, and also the role changes can shape the mind. So what happens? Okay, you take a role of change. What happens if you do that at a really minimal level, like this tiny manipulation, this tiny intervention? For 2 minutes, you say, I want you to stand like this, and it's going to make you feel more powerful. So listen what we did. We decided to bring people into a lab and run a little experiment. And these people adopted, for 2 minutes, either high power poses or low power poses. And I'm just going to show you 5 of the poses, although I took on only 2. So here's one, a couple more. This one has been dubbed the Wonder Woman by the media. Here are a couple more. So you can be standing or you can be sitting. And here are the low power poses. So you're folding up, you're making yourself small. This one is very low power. When you touch your neck, you're really protecting yourself. So this is what happens. We come in, we speak into a vial for 2 minutes. We say, you need to do this for all of this. They don't look at pictures of the poses. We don't want to pry them with the concept of power. We want them to be feeling power. So 2 minutes, let's do this. We then ask them, how powerful do you feel on a series of items? And then we give them an opportunity to gamble. And then we take another saliva sample. That's it. That's the whole experiment. So this is what we find. Risk tolerance, which is the gambling. We find that when you're in a high power pulse condition, 86% of you will gamble. When you're in a low power pulse condition, only 60%. and that's a hoping significant difference. Here's what we find on testosterone. From their baseline, when they come in, high-powered people experience about a 20% increase, and low-powered people experience about a 10% decrease. So again, 2 minutes, and you get these changes. Here's what you get on cortisol. High-powered people experience about a 25% decrease, and low-powered people experience about a 15% increase. So 2 minutes led to this hormonal changes that configure your brain to basically be either assertive, confident, and comfortable, or really straight reactive, and feeling sort of shut down. And we've all had that feeling, right? So it seems that our nonverbals do govern how we think and feel about ourselves. So it's not just others, but it's also ourselves. Also, our bodies change our minds. But the next question, of course, is, can pausing for a few minutes really change your life in meaningful ways? This is in the lab. It's the little task. It's just a couple of minutes. Where can you actually apply this? Which we cared about, of course, and so we think where you want to use this is evaluative situations, like social threat situations. Where are you being evaluated? Either by your friends, for teenagers, it's at the lunchroom table. For some people, it's speaking at a school board meeting. It might be giving a pitch or giving a talk like this or doing a job interview. We decided that the one that most people could relate to, because most people had been through, was a job interview. So we published these findings, and the media are all over it. And they say, okay, so this is what you do when you go in for the job interview, right? So we were of course horrified and said, oh my god, no, that's not what we meant at all. For numerous reasons, no, don't do that again. This is not about you talking to other people, it's you talking to yourself. What do you do before you go into a job interview? You do this, you're sitting down, you're looking at your iPhone or your Android, not trying to leave anyone out. You're looking at your notes, you're hunching up, making yourself small, when really what you should be doing maybe is this, like in the bathroom, right? Do that, find 2 minutes. So that's what we want to test, okay? So we bring people into a lab and they do either high or low power poses again. They go through a very stressful job interview. It's 5 minutes long. They are being recorded. They're being judged also, and the judges are trying to give no nonverbal feedback. So they look like this. Imagine this is a person interviewing you. So for 5 minutes, nothing. And this is worse than being heckled. People hate this. It's what Marianne LaFrance calls standing in social quicksand. So this really spikes your cortisol. So this is the job interview we put them through because we really want to see what happened. We then have these quarters. Look at these tabs, 4 of them. They're blind to the hypothesis. They're blind to the conditions. They have no idea who's being posing in what pose, and they end up looking at this sets of tabs, and they say, we want to hire these people. All the high-powered posers. We don't want to hire these people. We also evaluate these people much more positively overall. But what's driving it? It's not about the content of the speech. It's about the presence that they bring to the speech. Because we rate them on all these variables related to competence, like how well structured is the speech, how good is it, what are their qualifications. No effect on these things. This is what affected. These kinds of things, people are bringing their true selves. Basically, they're bringing themselves. They bring their ideas, but as themselves with no, residue over them. So this is what driving the effect or mediating the effect. So when I tell people about this, that our bodies change our minds, and our minds can change our behavior, and our behavior can change our outcomes, they say to me, it feels that right. So I said, fake it till you make it. It's not me. I don't want to get there and then still feel like a fraud. I don't want to feel like an imposter. I don't want to get there only to feel like I'm not supposed to be here. And that really resonated with me because I want to tell you a little story about being an imposter and feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. When I was 19, I was in a really bad car accident. I was thrown out of car, rolled several times. I was thrown from the car and I woke up in a head injury rehab ward, and I had been withdrawn from college, and I learned that my IQ had dropped by 2